Well, so you know me, I'm Sid, and we do this about 4 times a year. This is the second clinic that we're doing this year. The first one we did on rolls and 4-point rolls and all types of slow rolls as well. This one is talking about the spin. We sort of consider this one to be the introduction to 3D maneuvers, because the spin is a basis for a lot of 3D maneuvers you'll spin out of. The spin is accomplished in a variety of different ways, but it basically initiates with a stall maneuver, in that flying along on a level line, and we start adding elevator and pull back on the throttle. So eventually the plane is not going to fly anymore. In some cases, you might even pitch the nose up a little bit to initiate the stall even quicker. But basically, pretty soon that plane is going to stall. In full scale, a Cessna 172 stalls about 40 knots. So you'll be flying along, and when the airspeed gets to the point it's no longer going to support its own weight, and it gradually starts to drop out of the sky. With RC models, we have the ability of a lot less weight and a lot more power. And what you'll often see there, especially in competition, is if you come along, you'll start applying a little bit of elevator and actually pitch the plane a considerable amount. As long as the CG continues on a straight line, we're in good shape. If we start to balloon up or balloon down, then that's a deduction. But come in, drop the throttle, add some elevator, and you'll get to the point where the plane almost like completely stops in the air, and this plane will start to drop. At that point in time, you initiate the spin as well. So anyway, we're coming in. Let's say we're emulating a full-scale spin. Coming in, back on the throttle, maybe a little bit of elevator. We're starting to lose speed, and at some point in time, then the airplane is going to start to drop. When the airplane starts to drop, we'll initiate a rudder, which yaws the airplane, and now the airplane starts to drop and spiral down. So we maintain that rudder with the up elevator, and what you're going to see is sort of a auto rotation, is that the tail is going to spin around, and you're going to see that as you go down. So when you pull out of the spin, basically out of the controls, the plane is going to be pitched, and then you'll pitch down the nose, complete the line, and pull out. So what a spin looks like: coming in, start to stall, apply that rudder, spin around, stop, tuck the nose, and then pull out.
The rudder's the thing that makes everything work out of that, no?
On a full scale, you almost always initiate the spin with the rudder. In models, most of the guys also include some ailerons, and you'll see some of the guys spin very quickly, some of the guys spin very slowly. The aileron helps you control that roll rate. With an elevator, or rather with rudder only, when you pull that rudder out, you're probably going to complete maybe another quarter, maybe another half revolution. So you have to plan ahead when you dump the rudder in order to get the right orientation when you come out. If you've got ailerons involved, you can usually jump out of it quickly and you can stop the plane faster. So that's usually the advantage when you're flying a model, is topping in a little bit of aileron, you can stop that plane a little more predictably. Same thing happens though with the rudder. You just have to plan ahead that, okay, I'm going to be a quarter turn out, I want to stop here, so I get off the rudder earlier. Any questions about that?
Yeah,
it's a really easy maneuver.
So often, I just can't, never, that's a maneuver that, it looks so pretty when it's done.
Yeah. It's really kind of an easy maneuver to practice, and you can do it with any plane, and Jim will show you here in a little bit about the basic spin and getting into that spin. But it's just basically get it, and then we're up 2 or 3 mistakes high, maybe 4. So go ahead and dump the throttle, add a little bit of elevator, let the plane basically stop flying. When it starts to drop, kick in that rudder, hold the rudder and the elevator full up. When you're ready to release it, drop both the sticks, the plane will stop, tuck in the nose, finish it, and pull out.
Does it matter left or right rudder?
No. We'll talk about why it matters a little bit when we're actually trying to do a power on flat spin, and then it does matter. But for right now, we're just trying to initiate basically a power off spin. Drop it into a nice pearl spin, a nice little spiral, pull out, and then recover. In fact, Jim, are you batteried up?
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and show them what
Just a spin?
a typical spin looks like? And then we're going to talk about power on flat spins.
I make a typical spin look like.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about a power on flat spin and a power on inverted spin, and then a knife edge spin. So those spins are accomplished typically with a fair amount of power. The basic spin itself is throttle off, just let it fall out of the sky and drift down nice and slow and nice and pretty, and then pull out and continue on. In competition, sometimes you'll see areas of losing points is that you'll be flying along and you're not really stalled, and they talk about snap rolling into a spin, And in the last session, we talked about how to initiate a snap roll, and you're basically doing the same thing, sticks to the corners. So you're flying on, you're not stalled yet, and you'll see it snap down. That's a 0. Well, the plane never got stalled before you entered the spin. And sometimes too, you'll see them come into a spin, and basically you're heading down with just an aileron roll. That's also a 0, because in a spin, that tail has to auto-rotate. You've got to see that tail spiral around that down line. That's a true spin. This is not a spin, that's just an aileron roll on a vertical line. That's a 0 as well. You can also enter the spin, and typically we're talking about spin being a stall maneuver. So we're going to drop out of the stall. You can also just kind of pitch down, give it a little bit of aileron roll, and then go to the corners. So I can fly along, I can get to a point where I've got basically 0 throttle. I'm starting to stall it. When it starts to drop, I'll give it some aileron. And once it's kind of spinning a little bit, then I'll drop this to the corner, drop this to the corner, and I'm in a fairly tight spin. So you can initiate the spin by just coming over, rolling a little bit, and then taking the rudder to the corner, and it will start to spin out on it. You can start your regular spin. So lots of fun to try. You can do it with any airplane.
Now, the idea, you don't just haul back on the elevator. You feed it in slowly, get the airplane to slow down. And the airplane doesn't have to stop in the air. That's not a stall. That's, I don't know what you call it. But the airplane will reach a speed to where the wing will no longer support it. And the spin will actually, you know, this is exaggerated, but it's doing that. But so many, you look at the competition guys and they try to stop it in the air, and they all do it. And then it falls. And most of them are force entering. They're making it, you know, with aileron, and they're actually snapping it. And they get scorched. I quit because of stuff like that.
You're going to have trouble too with the full scale. Try bringing a Cessna 172 to complete stop in the air. Nose drop. No, not going to happen in full scale. So with the models we have, obviously a lot more power, a lot less weight, so you can do all sorts of strange things you can never do in full scale. So once you've mastered the regular spin and got that feeling of getting into the spin and controlling the spin, now we can start talking about initiating a flat spin. And a flat spin is something that Tom Cruise did in Top Gun, but he was unable to come out of that. But basically what we're trying to do, it's a power on spin. So we're going to go ahead and spin the airplane. We're going to let it drop. When it starts to drop, we're going to add a lot of power and a lot of elevator. And this is typically in your 3D race when you've got a tremendous deflection on the elevator, to the point that if you can actually achieve that, you're going to enter into a spin, and it's going to spin without losing any elevation. Because you're basically full power or maybe half power, and the plane is just spinning down almost like a top as it comes to the ground. To do that, again, it takes a lot of rudder, and it takes a fair amount of engine power to get that accomplished. But once you've kind of got used to how to do the spin, that's a power off spin. Now we're going to do a flat spin, which is a power on spin. And we're going to try to maintain a little elevation as we spin down, and when we get ready, we'll come off the power, come off the controls, let her drop and pull out. You can do the same thing by entering inverted, and we can do that later, but that's kind of the difference between a power off spin and a power on spin. Now in a power on spin, it does make a difference which way you spin, because you know we got the propeller rotating this direction, and if you apply a force to that airplane, there's another force that's going to be applied 90 degrees from that. So the problem spinning this way, and I have the left rudder, it basically forces the nose this way, correct?
Yeah.
And when I force the nose this way, I'm applying force this way, 90 degrees later, I get an equivalent force this way. So not only am I helping keep the plane in the air with my elevator, I'm helping keep the plane in the air with this force that comes in at 90 degrees. It's the same thing that you'll experience if you take a bicycle wheel on an axle and spin it and try to turn the wheel. You get this force that wants to bring you a different direction. That's the same kind of force. So in doing a power on flat spin, coming in this direction with the rudder, you get that little extra boost from this force that's applied here that kind of pushes the nose up, which helps flatten out the spin.
So that force is caused by the thrust of the motor?
It's a P factor caused by, it's typically you spin a bicycle wheel and try to turn it, you get that 90-degree force. That's the rotation of the motor. That's the force that's going to be applied here. If you spin this direction, okay, you get a force that's now applied here. It'll be a little bit of an effect, and you probably can tell it may require more elevator to kind of keep that flat spin going. So you can spin it either way, but it's easier to spin left in a power spin because you're taking advantage of that factor from the motor.
Now you will have to manage the throttle. You can't leave a lot of throttle there to find it.
No, it kind of becomes a balance. You know, drop it to the corners, and I'll play with the throttle, play with the position of the ailerons, try to kind of keep it flat. Maybe play the position of the rotor a little bit. So that kind of becomes a thumb balancing routine, and that's different for every airplane. But once I get into that flat spin, you know, I may need a little more elevator, a little less elevator. My wings might tilt, so I can add a little more aileron the other direction to try to keep my wings flat. So once you get started, just kind of play with the power, play with the elevator, play with the ailerons, kind of keep it flat. And you can flat spin most airplanes. The aerobatic airplanes obviously are easier to do that because you got more power and they've got higher control throw. But typically a flat spin or a power on flat spin, you're going to be in high rates, so you can get a lot of elevator boost and you can get a lot of rotor boost. Now with an inverted flat spin, if I'm doing a power on flat spin, you're going to see the plane rotate this way. If I'm doing an inverted flat spin, you're going to see the plane rotate this way. Because if I'm inverted, I got the same effect. I'm taking advantage of that force on the side of the plane, giving me up thrust, keeping my nose up. So in this case, I'm going to be spinning with left rotor. In this case, I'm going to be spinning with right rotor to take advantage of that power from the motor. And we'll try to show you some of those. We'll go over here, and I'll hook up one of my gas planes, and we'll go up and we'll take a look at some flat spins, both upright and inverted, and kind of give you some idea. Now, once you've got the regular spin kind of mastered, and you're playing with the power on flat spin, now you get to a maneuver which is called the blender, which is probably the maneuver that has the highest G-forces on your airplane and can literally rip the wings off. So what we're going to do here, we're going to get real high, under power, under high rates, point down, and crank the ailerons all the way one direction. So my plane is spinning. And then I'm going to pop into an inverted flat spin. What you're going to see is the plane going to pop like this and then start into a spin. So push over, full left aileron, pop my sticks in the position to go into regular flat spin. The plane's going to kind of pop out like this and start to go into inverted flat spin.
Under power.
Under power. And as soon as you make the pop, you're
A lot of power.
you're under power right here to get a lot of acceleration. I typically come off the power at the point I pop it, and then come back on the power once I get into the flat spin, because this transition is the most forceful. So I try to do that when I'm basically off the throttle, and once I get into that position, then I'm back on the throttle, trying to complete the spin.
So that's right rudder and down elevator.
Because if I stay here with full power, something's probably going to fall off the airplane, which is not good. Even the strong ones. You're putting so much force on the airplane that something's going to give. So let it come down, a little power to get spinning, off the throttle, pop it into a flat spin, and it'll continue on down. It sounds maybe kind of complicated, but really once you've tried it a few times and you kind of get the hang of it,
It's worse than that.
It's worse than that. It's fun. But it's, again, it kind of becomes a balancing thing with the thumbs on the throttle, the elevator, and the rudder and the ailerons. So it all kind of works out in the end. Got a nice controlled flat spin, no throttle, or a regular spin with no throttle. We have the flat spin, under power, inverted and upright. And then you move into something called a knife edge spin, which is always kind of difficult for me to get into, but once you get into it, it's a pretty fantastic maneuver, because that's when you get the plane on edge and it's spinning like this all the way down. Basically spinning on the rotation of the wings. And you'll also hear the prop really rip. It'll be a different sound on the prop, because again of the air coming off the props and off the airframe. The knife edge spin just sounds different because of the way the air is moving across the airframe. It's a very pretty maneuver, and you can really become enthralled with it. I was talking to a friend of mine who was initiating some knife edge spins, and he got into one, he liked it so well that he watched it go right to the ground.
Looking pretty.
You kind of get hypnotized. Wow, that's really cool. Oh, there's the ground. Too late.
Yeah.
But start out with a regular spin, power off. Let stall a bit, kick a rudder, and just kind of let it float down and get a feeling for that. Try that both directions, have fun with it. And then maybe try that same spin and kick a little power in and hold the rudder and try to balance out the level airplane and see what happens. And just kind of experiment with that. But again, keep it 3 or 4 high. Spins are always done very, very high. I was used to spinning with a regular airplane like this, and I had my biplane out here, which I really was fairly new to me, and I decided, well, I'm going to try some of the spins. Well, with the biplane, once you come out of that spin, you're really stalled. And you've got those two big wings and all that airframe. When a biplane is flying slowly, there's a lot of drag there. So it takes a lot longer for that biplane to pick up a little speed so the control surfaces are effective. So the first time I did a spin coming down with this biplane, it's like, whoa! It was way close to the ground. So after that, I always start with the biplane even higher than the regular plane, because I know after I get out of the spin, it's going to take me more time to get some airspeed to get my control surfaces so I can pull out safely. Again, every airplane has its own personality, and you just kind of learn what that particular airplane does and just have fun with it. That's kind of what we're all out here for, is to have a little fun, and that's the whole point.